When people talk of wealth beneath the sea, one tends to think of oil or Spanish galleons. But there are other riches too beneath Britain's shallow coastal waters. The finest of our marine communities is found here in the Bristol Channel beneath the stark granite cliffs of the island of Lundy. Lundy, about 3 miles long by half a mile wide, lies 12 miles off the North Devon coast. Much of the marine life around its shores comes from the mainland, but it shelters other creatures too, from as far away as the Mediterranean. The wealth and variety of this underwater environment led in November 1986 to the declaration of Lundy's waters as Britain's first marine nature reserve. The reserve extends for about a mile in all directions from Lundy's shore. A mile of some of our most valuable and varied marine habitats, Lundy's Golden Mile. Perhaps the island's best-known residents are the puffins. In fact, the name Lundy originates from the Icelandic lunda, meaning puffin. The birds were once very common. 40 or 50 years ago, over 7,000 lived here. Today, there are 70 or so breeding in crevices in the cliffs. The kittiwakes have also declined in number, although not as dramatically as the puffins. They'll spend most of the spring and early summer nesting on inaccessible ledges. Razorbills fish for sand eels in the waters around the island and lay their eggs ashore in shallow depressions in the exposed rock. Between feeding sorties, guillemots rest in the sun. Both forms occur here, the normal variety and the bridal guillemot with a white eye stripe. Along the more sheltered parts of Lundy's coasts, grey seals laze in the calm waters. A young pup, born last autumn, exhales and bottles down to the seabed to doze. There it'll sleep for 5 or 10 minutes under the watchful eye of a nearby adult. Once the oxygen in its lungs is used up, it returns to the surface to breathe. The 80 or so grey seals that live around the island spend most of their time within Lundy's Golden Mile. They share their home with a wide variety of marine plants and animals now protected within the boundaries of the reserve. Within the surge gullies, which are swept twice daily by the falling tide, Tubularia finds its food. Tubularia is a colonial hydroid, rather like a coral, made up of dozens of individual animals or polyps. Each one extends its tentacles into the gentle current to feed on tiny particles and plankton floating in the water. Tubularia's flexible stalks provide a home for creatures such as the tiny skeleton shrimp. This female, no bigger than a fingernail, has a pouch on her underside bursting with young. She must wait until the water is calm for less than an hour between tides before she can release them. The dozen or so young emerge from the female's pouch as perfect miniature replicas of the adult. Now is a critical time for them. Skeleton shrimps may be small, but they're voracious predators, and the female could easily mistake one of her offspring for a meal. The tubularia, while it provides a home for some creatures, provides food for others. The polyps are eaten by sea slugs, marine relatives of our garden pests. The majority are carnivorous, and hydroids such as tubularia are a favorite food. The sea slug's simple heart can be seen beating beneath its smooth, translucent skin. Sea slugs, or nudibranchs, vary greatly in shape, colour and size, although few reach as much as an inch in length. The waters round Lundy are famous for the variety of species to be found here. The bright colours of this handsome species serve as a warning to predators that it tastes disgusting. It's rare elsewhere, but it's common around Lundy. The shallow coastal waters are bathed in sunlight and rich in plant life. They're the home of another spectacular creature. A lion's mane jellyfish catches food by trailing long tentacles armed with stinging cells through the water. But the young whiting is completely safe. Whiting are often found associated with the lion's mane and seem to be immune to its stinging cells. No one knows how it does this, but it's likely that the whiting acquires a protective layer of jellyfish mucus around its body. The stinging cells don't fire because the mucus feels like just another tentacle. The sea cucumber lives permanently on the sea floor. It's not a plant, but an animal, a close relative of the starfish and the sea urchin. Although it's the same size and shape as a cucumber, it's soft and hollow. It moves along the seabed on its tube feet, just like a starfish, and it feeds by hoovering up particles with its large, specially modified feet. It breathes by pumping oxygen-rich water through its body via its muscular cloaca. At first glance, it looks defenseless, a large, easy meal for any predator. The sleepy crab, that's its name, lives mainly by scavenging, and the dozy movements of the sea cucumber make it look a simple target, but they conceal an unexpected line of defense. The cucumber ejects long, white, sticky threads from its rear end. They're produced from glandular organs inside its body, and very soon the crab becomes completely entangled. The threads not only stick to the attacker, but to any nearby weeds or rocks, rendering the crab completely immobile. This unique behavior has earned the sea cucumber a nickname among fishermen, They call it the cotton spinner. While the crab is left to sort out the sticky mess, the sea cucumber can beat a leisurely retreat. Beneath the rocky shores and swirling currents of Lundy Island, a whole community of marine life lies hidden from view. A male corkwing wrasse is busy working on his nest. The nest is built of coralline seaweed wedged between large boulders. It's sheltered from the tides, but it still needs to be maintained. The brightly coloured male hopes to attract a female to his nest to spawn, so it's important that he and his nest look in good shape. But his duties won't end there. Once the eggs are laid, it's the male who defends and tends the nest until they hatch. Many of the creatures that live in areas exposed to the full force of the current are permanently anchored to the seabed. A fanworm repairs its tube using a mixture of mucus and silt. It's shaped by paddling movements of the two large palps. The fanworm can retract into its tube at the slightest hint of danger, but in the meantime its tentacles continue to filter food from the sea. The Devonshire cup coral extends its tentacles in the same way, but it feeds more like a jellyfish. Each tentacle is armed with a barrage of stinging cells called nematocysts, with which it stuns its prey. Around the base of the coral, a ring of little barnacles shelters beneath this protective shield. They too extend their long, feathery limbs to feed. They literally kick food particles into their mouths. The barnacles gain protection and an elevated feeding position from their association with the coral. The coral, on the other hand, gains nothing. In fact, it loses, because the barnacles compete with it for food. Deeper down, a group of golden feather hydroids sways in the increasing current. The tide is on the turn. As the tide rushes through the surge gullies, the kelp fronds bend like palms in a hurricane. Those creatures not firmly anchored to the rocks or weed run the risk of being swept away. The permanently attached animals, like the colonial sea fans, are flexible and give with the strong current, while those not attached have developed some remarkable ways of hanging on. This young lumpsucker prevents itself from being swept away in the tide by using specially modified fins. The fins on the fish's underside are shaped to form a sucker. The lumpsucker moves in a series of short hops along the kelp fronds. The Connemara clingfish, which despite its name is a Mediterranean species, is equipped with a ventral sucker in the same way. It also escapes the strong tides by remaining in rocky crevices, which it defends vigorously against any intruders. The sucker is really a modification of its pelvic fins, shaped to make a watertight contact with the rock. The top knot is a flatfish, but it lives in crevices instead of lying on the bottom. It uses the same principle, but in a different way. The fish pumps out the water between itself and the rock, using the fins at the rear end of its body. This creates a suction, which sticks the top knot to the rock. In order to move, the fish simply allows water to flow beneath it, breaking the suction. Where the tidal currents scour the seabed off the south of Lundy, hundreds of thousands of brittle stars cover the sea floor. Few animals can cling on here once the tide starts to run, yet 2 species of brittle star live, feed and breed in this environment. They feed by extending an arm into the current to collect the small particles of detritus being swept over them. As the current increases, the brittle stars link together some of their 5 arms to form a net covering hundreds of square yards. This saves them from being washed away, so that they can continue to feed, stretching up an arm or 2 from the living carpet. As the tide subsides, individual brittle stars climb on top of rocks to spawn. The females eject their eggs into the sea, using pumping movements of the body, while the males release clouds of sperm. Each egg develops to form a free-swimming larva that will eventually settle back into the colony to form a tiny brittle star that will spend the early part of its life amid the spines of the adult. In the twilight of the deeper water, where centuries of silt have collected, a red gurnard feels its way along the seabed. The 3 pairs of legs are in fact modified fin rays, part of the pectoral fin. They're very sensitive, and the fish can detect food buried in the sand. They're also very mobile, and the gurnard can actually walk along the seabed. Small crabs are a favourite food, although sometimes they can prove a little difficult to swallow. The northern octopus begins to hunt at dusk. Like the gurnard, it's partial to crabs. The octopus lives in a lair, in this case a pile of stones. Here it lies in wait for prey, ready to pounce. A small crab ventures dangerously close to the octopus's hiding place. Those claws are no match for the powerful suckers along the octopus's arms. As the octopus strikes, It injects the crab with powerful enzymes that cause rapid paralysis, and the meal is taken back to the lair to be eaten. Only the soft parts are eaten. The crab's hard, calcareous shell is ejected. A small plaice seizes the opportunity for an easy meal, picking off the remaining flesh. An octopus won't hesitate to catch a plaice, for this one's just fed, so for the time being, the plaice is in no danger. But the octopus isn't the only predator in these waters. What looks like a feather duster is in fact a fatal lure to attract fish towards a powerful array of teeth. The anglerfish has a prodigious appetite. Plastic buckets, lobsters, and even cormorants have been found in its stomach. A fully grown specimen can be over 6 feet long. The plaice has a lucky escape. The goby, attracted to the anglerfish's waving lure, isn't so fortunate. The fish shuffles down into a shallow pit, digging itself in with fins that act like feet to await its next meal. This time, the plaice wasn't so lucky. Lundy's 2 lighthouses warn shipping away from its treacherous currents. To divers, nighttime reveals some magical creatures which are invisible without artificial light and a dark background. The dark waters spring to life and Lundy's Golden Mile becomes studded with brightly coloured jewels. They're ctenophores, or comb jellies, which drift with the current. They're transparent, but their tiny beating cilia break up the light into all the colours of the rainbow, while their tentacles trail behind in search of food. These, and all the other marine plants and animals that live here, are protected by Britain's first official marine nature reserve. The wealth beneath the sea isn't all oil. There are other natural assets too, and barring catastrophe, they'll last a lot longer. Here in the Bristol Channel, Lundy's Golden Mile is hopefully the first of many reserves for the future.
In complete contrast, tomorrow night we see the endangered species of aldabra in the Indian Ocean.